Hello, I'm Russell Haythorn with Denver 7, and welcome to Denver Decides. This community partnership is dedicated to accessible and transparent elections. The partnership includes the League of Women Voters of Denver, Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, and is presented by Denver 8 TV. Our mission today is to present a candidate forum in anticipation of the general election coming up on Tuesday, November 3rd. Among other offices, this election includes the candidates vying to represent constituents in Colorado's State House of Representatives from District 4. District 4 is located in central west and northwest Denver. Our format is a pretty standard one. We will begin with opening statements that will be followed by rounds of questions that have been submitted by the organizers of this forum. Since we do have a time limit, we may not be able to get to all of the submitted questions. All of the candidates, however, will answer all of the questions we ask tonight, and all of their responses will be timed. So let's begin by meeting the candidates vying to represent Colorado State House District 4 as your next state representative. The candidates are standing left to right facing the cameras in the order that their names will appear on the November ballot. So beginning to my right is Grant Price. Grant, thanks for being here tonight. And on my left is Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez. Serena, I hope I did well by your name, and thank you for being here. Serena is the incumbent. As one more note in this race, the candidates will be asked to be sincere and honest, and also direct and forthright with their answers to help the voters distinguish one candidate from another. We will begin with 1-minute opening statements from each candidate, and we will proceed in ballot order with those statements. So once again, starting to my right is Grant Price. And Grant, it's now time for your opening statement, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Serena. My name is Grant Price. I've lived in Colorado the majority of my life. The time away was actually spent as an adult for 7 years in the Northwest. My family has been here since 1862. I am proud to be a Coloradan. I love this state, and I chose to run because I believe every person in every district deserves choices on the ballot. Not so much that there's any items that I would contradict what my opponent has done in her term in the legislation, but I have noticed several things in the last year or so that have concerned me with the legislature seeming to listen more to the executive branch than to the people, and I would like to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, for your response. Serena, it's time for your opening statement.
Thank you, Russell, and thank you, Mr. Price. My name is Serena Gonzales-Gutierrez, and I wear a couple roles. One, I am a mother of 3 children. I am a wife and partner. Oh, looking in the wrong place. I'm a wife and partner to my husband of 16 years. I'm also a program director for a program that works with children, youth, and families in the city and county of Denver, for which I've worked in child welfare and juvenile justice for the last 17 years. And I'm also the current state representative. And I am also a 3rd generation Denver resident and 6th generations in Colorado. I have ancestry tracing down to the southern part of the state. And I am just incredibly honored to be able to serve a community where I come from, a community where my husband and I both grew up, and now we are raising our 3 children in that same community. My parents have operated small businesses in North Denver. I remember riding my bike around the neighborhood with my little brothers. And I just want to say that I plan to continue to serve this community with the utmost respect.
Serena, thank you very much for that opening statement. Now to our first round of questions, and each of you will have 1 minute to answer each of these questions. And so we'll start in reverse order from those opening statements. So Serena, you will answer this question first. When you think of your constituents, which comes to mind, taxpayer or citizen, and why?
Oh, I would say and I understand the question is asking either one, but I would say it is both, because I don't think of necessarily citizen, but I think of resident of in our community and in my district. Because we have a lot of folks that are here that are immigrants, and some of them are new citizens, and they are also taxpayers, regardless of the fact if they are immigrants or if they are actual citizens here in this country. They still are paying taxes, and so I see them as one of the same.
Thank you, Representative Grant. Your turn to answer that question. Taxpayer or citizen, and why?
I would first look at them as a citizen, because as a representative, they are my constituents. They are who I am to listen to. But I also would look at them as a taxpayer, because I believe the job of government is to protect their interests and to protect what their taxes would be going for, and to try to limit the number of taxes that might be imposed upon them. But yes, I would look at them as citizens. The citizens are the ones that have the right to vote. They are the ones that have our ear. Whether they immigrated here or not, as long as they are citizens, that's who I would look to, yes.
Thank you, Grant. The next question is related to homelessness, and we'll start this question with Grant. What is the state's responsibility and what is the municipality's responsibility in terms of solutions to our homeless crisis?
That is a difficult question. Homelessness is a problem, and it's not going to get any better. With the issues we've had with COVID and the shutdowns of businesses and the inability to work jobs, more and more people are going to possibly be forced out of their houses, come into a situation where they're homeless. That's something that needs addressed. I do not have an answer at this time. I would look to others wiser than myself to help me determine what might work best. Thank you.
Grant, thank you. On the topic of homelessness, Representative.
Thank you. When it comes to homelessness and at the state level, what we can do, and I think we have tried to do over the years, is look at funding that can be allocated for affordable housing. There are some things already in place, building that affordable housing fund, and also giving local municipalities the ability to create more affordable housing within their jurisdictions. On top of that, programming and services for folks who are experiencing homelessness. We know that a lot of these issues stem from whether it is substance use issues or mental health disorders, and we need to get at the root of that problem and help these individuals come out of the state that they're in. When it comes to a municipal level, one of the things we do need to stop is treating people as if they are trash on the curb. And I'm talking about the sweeps. That means, again, how do we provide adequate resources so that people are not having to live in this way?
Serena, thank you for your responses. And our next question, and Representative, we'll start this with you. This is on the topic of gun violence. What steps, if any, should be taken to curb gun violence in our community?
Thank you. So gun violence is something that is, I grew up in North Denver, and I grew up in the 90s during the summer of violence. And I have to say, in the space that I work in right now with youth, our youth gun violence is at an all-time high. And that is extremely concerning, and part of it is in my district. And so I continue to do work to address those issues. At a state level, things that I know I have considered is looking at wait times when it comes to purchasing a gun, looking at the requirement of licensing. We have to have a license to drive a car. Driving a car, you can kill someone driving a car. It is a vehicle that can be utilized in that manner, just as a gun can be used in that manner. And so I firmly believe that we need to look at ways to create a licensing mechanism.
Representative, thanks for that response. Same question, Grant, on the topic of gun violence. What can be done to curb that in our community?
Well, gun violence is a terrible thing, but it is just that. It's violence. Violence, whether they use a gun, whether they use their car, whether they use any other item that they choose as a weapon. It can do serious damage and can damage a lot of people. I believe in reality the best thing to do is to train people, to teach people how to be safe with firearms if they're around them, how to report to teachers if it's young people that see something, how to identify the situations. Another thing that I would like to see is actually having armed security in our schools. We have armed security for our representatives. Why don't we do that for those that are most at risk in our schools, our children?
Grant, thank you. On to our next round of questions. And these questions are for the candidates vying for State House of Representatives, District 4. And Grant, we'll start with you. This is on COVID and liability, COVID-19 and liability. Please answer the first part of this question with a yes or no, and then I'll ask the second part of the question. Suppose one of your household members had a COVID test earlier today, and after definitively being exposed to a COVID positive person, would you go to a friend's dinner party tonight?
No.
And the second part of that question, would you be willing to introduce legislation that could assign financial liability to someone who would?
Is this again yes or no?
This is your 1 minute response.
Okay. I would hope that most people had the courtesy and the intelligence to not expose someone else, to not expose their friends, their coworkers, their family members. My wife and I did have the opportunity to be tested for COVID about 2 weeks ago. My wife has some health issues. Those health issues represent themselves as a cough and various other things at times. But I would not be willing to place a monetary penalty on someone for doing that. But I would hope that we could train them better to better respect individuals.
Grant, thanks for that response. Serena, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. On this topic, if you had a household member who tested positive, would you attend a dinner party that night?
No.
And then on the second part of that question, and again, you have a 1 minute response to this part of the question, would you be willing to introduce legislation that can assign financial liability if someone were to expose someone else?
I don't know that assigning financial liability is necessarily the right way to create accountability and responsibility for those actions, because that can also be seen as somewhat regressive in, making somebody else pay. And I think there's just a lot to be considered in this situation. And I do think that, continuing education on the issue and maybe it's education also around, what you ask folks if you are having a dinner party, I suppose. Frankly, I don't know why you would, maybe be having a dinner party in these times with everything that we're experiencing, unless you know what people are being exposed to. And a lot of that is just simple communication with one another about what you're doing in your lives outside of the gatherings, perhaps, that you're having.
Representative, thank you. And on to the next question. Representative, you know your district well. What is the biggest challenge within your own district? And what is or what will be your plan to tackle that challenge?
Thank you. When I was first running for this seat 2 years ago, the issue that was ringing loud and clear, and even still today, even more so, and has been shown a light on even brighter, is housing and affordable housing. And so that is something that I want to continue to tackle. I want to look at ways that we can provide tools to local municipalities to create more affordable housing options. I also want to continue work that I've already started with regards to tenant rights, because as we are seeing with this pandemic, We have seen an uptick in evictions, and we talk about homelessness earlier. That is a huge part of that. We already were having a lot of issues with folks having to pay exorbitant amount of money in late fees, being evicted because of late fees. And this was before COVID. I can't imagine how things are happening right now for folks who are renting.
Representative, thank you. Grant, same question. You stated in your opening statement that you're familiar with Colorado. Your family has a rich history here. What's the biggest challenge in your district?
I'm going to follow suit with Serena, or Miss Gutierrez. I'm sorry. I'm hoping I'm not offending you by using your first name.
It's okay.
I think you did better than I did.
But the housing issue is a problem, and it's a problem in many ways. We have rents that have skyrocketed over the last 2 decades. My own daughter has had to move out of the state because they couldn't afford to live here. But what I would like to do in order to tackle that is possibly work with relieving some of the fees associated with updating or building new housing, because it's true, we do have to reduce the cost of housing, but I don't agree with the idea of taxing somebody in order to require additional fees and or cover costs that the construction requires.
Grant, thanks for that response. This is the last question of this round, and this relates to social justice. Grant, what kinds of policies, if any, will you pursue to promote social and racial justice in our community?
This is a very hot topic right now. But in reality, our nation was founded in such a way, and our state as well, that we are all created equal. We are all equal individuals. We should not be looking at our skin to see one thing or the other. I will agree that people have been mistreated. People are mistreated. We need to deal with that in a way, again, in training, in helping people to break free of that cycle of bigotry and oppression. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Representative.
Thank you. I would have to actually disagree with the fact that this country was founded on equality. This country was founded on oppression. Dating back to the indigenous peoples that were here and the land that was stolen from them, dating back to slavery, over and over again. And I would say this is not, for me as a Latina, this is not a hot topic right now. This is something that is happening and has been happening since the beginning of this country. I was one of the co-prime sponsors of Senate Bill 217, the Law Enforcement Accountability Act. And it is that type of legislation that I think is needed in this coming year to continue to work on these types of issues and how not only law enforcement, but how all of our government interacts with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and racial backgrounds. So, I will continue to work on criminal justice reform, as I always have, and specifically in juvenile justice.
Representative, thanks for that response. Thank you both for your thoughtful responses and this healthy debate here tonight. Now we're moving on to what we call the lightning round. And in this round, you simply answer with a yes, no, or pass. And I will ask the questions, and again, the answer is yes, no, or pass. And we will again go from left to right, the way the viewing audience sees you on screen. So Grant, we'll start with you. And actually, we're breaking the rules with these first questions. You can answer for or against, because I'm asking about the ballot issue. So how do you plan to vote on the following ballot issue this year? Prop 118, paid family and medical leave.
Against.
For.
Thank you both. Prop 116, decreasing the state income rate.
Pass.
Against.
Thank you both. Serena, we'll start with you on this. How will you vote on Prop 115, abortion ban after 22 weeks?
Against.
Grant. And Serena again, Amendment B, repealing the Gallagher Amendment.
I will be voting for.
Grant?
Against.
Thank you. Now, yes or no? Do you support allowing nonviolent, low-level felons to leave state prisons right now due to COVID? Grant?
No.
Representative?
Yes.
Thank you. Representative, should state legislators work at the Capitol longer than 5 or 6 months?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Are you concerned that factors related to the COVID-19 pandemic will suppress voters' involvement in this November's election? Grant?
I would hope not, but I guess.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative, do you think the current State House is listening to its constituents?
Yes.
Thank you. Grant?
No.
Grant, we'll start with you. Do you or any of your family members own a licensed firearm?
They are not licensed in the state, so no to that. But yes, I own firearms.
Representative?
Yes.
Thank you. In the last 30 days, have you used mass transit, a bike, or walked for business purposes to get to work? Representative?
No.
No.
Thank you both. For this election, will you use the U.S. Postal Service to mail in your ballot? Representative?
No. I never do.
Thank you. Thank you. Grant?
No, I will not.
Thank you. Another question. Marijuana has been legal in Colorado for nearly 8 years. Have you personally consumed some of the products available in our state? Grant?
No.
Representative?
No.
Thank you. House members are paid a salary of just over $40,000 a year. Was the salary what attracted you to run for office? Representative?
No.
Grant?
No.
I didn't figure. Thank you both. Okay, moving on. Round 8, or question 8, I guess. I don't know which round we're on. Anyway, this is a chance for you guys to ask questions of one another. So this is where the fun begins. Each of you can ask an opponent a question, and hopefully they'll have an answer for you. We will reverse the ballot order and begin with Serena. Serena, you can ask Grant a question.
Thank you.
And Grant, you'll have 1 minute to answer.
Mr. Price, I want to ask, would you rather cut education funding or close tax loopholes?
I'm not sure how to answer that fully. I'm not in favor of cutting education funding, but I believe we have a great deal of funding that's being misused in that fund. I believe that we need to spend more money for teachers, more money for class participation activities, and less for administrative issues. My clock.
Thank you, Grant. And Grant, now it's your turn to ask a question of your opponent, the representative.
All right. Serena, how do you feel about some of the laws that have been passed in the not too distant past related to firearms and magazine bans and things of that nature?
Representative.
Thank you. I support those laws. They're, to me, seeing the research and what has been done, there is no reason that somebody needs that many bullets in their gun. And, you know, laws, I voted in favor of the Extreme Risk Protection Order law in 2019, and I would support it again.
Thank you both. Unfortunately, we only had time for one question, and that brings us to the end of our Q&A statements. And now we'll move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we'll reverse the order from the statements we began with at the opening of this debate. So, Representative, it's your turn to deliver your closing statement.
Thank you. I, just want to say that I'm thankful for this opportunity. I am thankful to have been able to serve a community that I am have been a part of, and my family has for generations. My kids, my husband and I work really hard to raise them on values of education, compassion, and advocacy. And I see it as our job as adults, as leaders, to lead by example in those ways. I am committed to continuing to do the work that I have set forth to do in our community and for our community, ensuring that we have basic human rights, that we're paying folks a living wage, that we have affordable housing, a quality education, and health care. And I also want to say that, making sure that our neighbors are not being displaced at a disproportionate rate. When it comes to voting on November 3rd, I hope that I can earn your vote. Vote Serena for Colorado, and please visit my website, serenaforcolorado.com.
Serena, thank you. And Grant, your turn. A closing statement.
As I said in the opening, I decided to run because I believe people need a choice in every race, in every district. I believe there are some differences between Ms. Serena and myself, and it's really up to the voters to decide. I ask you to look at me, listen to what I have to say. I am a man of faith. I trust God, and I would take an oath of office very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, and thank you, Representative. Thank you both for being here and participating tonight and for introducing yourselves. Well, Representative, you needed no introduction, but thank you for introducing yourself, Grant, to our voters. Our thanks also to the Denver Decides partners, which include Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation and the League of Women Voters of Denver. Denver Decides is presented by Denver 8 TV. Remember, the election is Tuesday, November 3rd. Make sure your voice is heard and be sure to register and be sure to vote as well. For complete election information online, go to denverdecides.org. I'm Russell Haythorn with Denver 7. Thank you for joining us.